I'm Bob. I'm an addict. So one thing that was, clear to me before I ever found my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting was that I was an addict. So I felt very comfortable when I came into the rooms for the first time and heard a few people identify as addicts. I knew what I needed to do, and it was pretty simple. The truth is I'd known I was an addict for a long time, but I didn't know anything about recovery, and I certainly didn't know anything about NA. I needed to ask for help. And, I met a bunch of people at my first meeting, and I clearly had nothing in common with them. I didn't see how that was going to work. But, I also wanted to be able to, go home and, convince my wife that my drug problem was, not getting worse. So I wasn't sure what to do. I returned to the meeting. Maybe it was later the same week or possibly the next week. And I went back and the same people were there. And, once again, they introduced themselves as addicts. And it was more clear to me then that, that I knew, how to identify with the disease of addiction. I started to figure out that, that we had readings to read, and I figured out that I could do stuff like that. So it seemed pretty simple. It wasn't too much later. I'd figured out that, that I needed to come on a regular basis, because I heard some people, share that, doing, a meeting a day was a really good idea. And I knew that, I needed to do something different because, all I knew how to do was use. And, truthfully, I was, using between meetings because it was what I did. So I decided I need to get a home group. And that first meeting that I'd gone to, where the people were clearly not anything like me, I found over time that they were quite a bit like me. So, where, some of the initial, symptoms of the disease, perhaps their drug of choice or, the consequences that they had or, the places that it took them, some of the attempts that they had to, circumvent the bad effects of the disease, they were a little bit different, but somehow there was something, underneath that, maybe I was a bit like them. So I decided that, maybe I needed to form a connection with somebody. And I really had never done that before. I really didn't know anything about, forming connections with people. And this seems really strange for me to admit because, I was married and had 3 small children and had, what I thought was a normal family. My parents stayed together, all that kind of stuff. I thought things were the way they were supposed to be, and yet somehow things had gone horribly wrong. And these people that I, on paper I had a connection with, I had no connection with. And the people that I met in the meetings, somehow I started to feel like, maybe there was something I could learn from them. So I decided to get a home group, and they gave me the key to the church. And I thought that was really strange, too, because they hardly knew me, and, it's like, and you're going to give me the key to the church? Okay. But the rule was I had to get there early and get the coffee started. Okay, and that was very difficult for me. So I had to learn some things about unity. And one of the things that I learned is that, if you didn't get there early enough to make the coffee before the meeting started, that people yelled at you. Okay, and then I didn't feel like I really belonged very much, so I figured I should do something different about it, and maybe, at least try to get there a little bit early, or maybe just be prepared to, take a beating when the coffee wasn't ready on time. So that was working out pretty well for me. and after a little while, my home group decided that they really needed a GSR because we didn't have one, and they asked me, since I'd been coming on a regular basis, if I'd be the GSR. And they said, well, it's a little bit of a circus, but you'll do okay. And I thought, well, how ridiculous can this be? So I went, and and truthfully, it was not that much more ridiculous than anything else I'd ever encountered in my life. I'd had a long history. So I had I'll have to say I had a pretty successful career as an engineer. And I did especially well because I was most often right, not because I was, the easiest person to get along with, or because I showed up on time. But I was mostly right, and that was one of the skills that I had learned, is that if you were right more than most of the people, then sometimes they would overlook the other faults you had. So I got to the area service meeting, and I found that that particular survival skill wasn't working at all for me. Okay, no one really cared if you were right anymore. And so I had to ask some people what to do about that. And my home group, they taught me some things. One of the things that they did was, boy, I wish I could remember what the specific topic was, but there was some contentious issue in our area, and it needed to be discussed. And so we had a business meeting, and we formed a group conscience, and they asked me to take a motion back to area, and it was something that I really didn't agree with at all, and I thought it was it was pretty ridiculous, and clearly the other people at area weren't going to go along with it. But they said, no, really, you need to take this to area, and you need to make this motion, and you need to present it, and you need to support our case that we laid out in the business meeting. It's like, how can I do this? It's like, because it's your job. Okay, so I went. I wish I could remember what the issue was. Okay, but we get to area, and they're like, well, this is ridiculous. Okay, but we did what we always did there. We discussed it, and then we sent it back all the groups, and the groups discussed it among themselves, and then it came back the next month. And we had our business meeting, and I said, so, what am I supposed to do? This came up, and, came back, and, I'm bringing it back to the group. And the group said, well, we don't really support that. Okay, that's kind of what I thought all along. So we had a vote, and yeah, it didn't pass. Okay, so what that taught me is that sometimes you need to trust the process. So it wasn't about being right. It was about really about having the conversation. So one of the things that I've really learned in NA is how to work with other people, and that's had a huge benefit in my life, because this is an area that I really struggle with my whole life was how to get along with people, and like I said, some of these skills that I thought I had, they didn't work. They certainly didn't work on my wife. They didn't work on my parents or my sisters, and they were completely ineffective on my children. And so I had to learn how to form relationships with people. I had to learn how to form these bonds, so then when these difficult situations came up, I didn't have to rely on being more right than everybody else, because that, like I said, that clearly wasn't working. So one of the things that area service taught me was in a loving and caring environment, how to try to practice spiritual principles in my life, how to make mistakes, and for the most part, people were forgiving. What I found is that, my family is mostly forgiving. People that I work with, that's kind of high expectations to think that, that their resentments are going to like go away over time. So I really have had to learn how to be on my best game, from the beginning, and and learn how to practice these spiritual principles well in a service committee meeting, or maybe with my family, where they wouldn't hate me forever. And then when I got good enough at it, then maybe I could practice these things at work. And this is something that I continue to do. A lot of times, I'm an engineer, and everybody's got their own specialty that that they're responsible for, and so we all see the problem from different angles and have different ideas on what's the right way to do it. But most of these people, they don't know anything about interpersonal skills or recovery, certainly. And I go in there and I try to use our consensus-based decision making, without letting them know what I'm doing. And sometimes it works, but most often what happens is we'll agree to something and we'll walk out of there, and then everybody will change their mind. So I have to be. I don't know. I have to practice some other skills there, things like writing down what we agreed to, and that's something else that I learned in NA, because when we have our business meetings, we can all agree to it and we can all nod our heads, but if we don't write it down and say this is what we agreed to do, we end up coming back the next month and somebody will say, but I didn't agree to that. That's crazy. So these skills that they really changed my life. I really liked the the message of our convention. Of beyond our wildest dreams. One of the things that I didn't think was possible for me was to have a healthy relationship with my children that didn't involve some form of drug or alcohol use. I came in here with an idea that I was going to be the old guy sitting on the porch using with my kids, and I thought that was normal because that's kind of how I grew up. But as I stuck around, and my kids were little when I came in here, as they grew older and they became teenagers, they certainly they did their share of risky behavior and all that. But now they're young adults, and the miracle of this program is that this disease doesn't have the same hold over them that it held over me. When I was in my 20s and I was, having consequences and difficulties with using, I looked for more successful ways of using, where a more rational person would say, yeah, this was clearly a bad idea and I'm going to stop doing it. I would figure out how to do it better. So they seem to have a better time with that than I did. The other thing that's really cool is when they do struggle with stuff, we're able to talk about it. I'm able to listen to them, and I learn not to try to fix it. I have two daughters and a son. My son I'm extremely proud of. He went to college for a couple of years. He dropped out, and he joined the Air Force, which is not something that I would have chosen for him. But he's been in the Air Force for almost 5 years. He's been deployed for the second time just a few days ago. He's one of my heroes. He ran in the Boston Marathon this year, and I don't know if any of you guys follow that kind of stuff, but it was like 40 degrees and raining and blowing in their face, and it was difficult to watch from the sidelines, but it had to be even more difficult, to run for 3 hours in those conditions. But one of my biggest joys of the last year was, to get to see him run past me after he'd been running for 25 and a half miles, nearing the finish line, and be able to, yell out his name, loudly, and get his attention and have him wave to us as he was going by. He's worked really hard for that, and a lot of times I think, well, I never did anything that special. A lot of times I think that. But I don't think most people understand how difficult it was for most of us, to get clean or to stay clean or to find a new way to live. Because, most of us had no experience with those kind of things before we came here, and didn't know that there was a choice, that there was another way that, that life might end up. And life has turned out differently for me, thanks to the Narcotics Anonymous program. One of the strange things that happened to me early on in recovery, there was a guy that came in here who had been, homeless for a while, and had, he genuinely struggled with a lot of things, but one of them was money, and yet, he went to his sponsor and he asked him for help, and he says, I want to go to the shore and I want to take a vacation for the week, because, we lived out in Pennsylvania. That's what everybody did. It's like, I'm going to go to the shore for the week. How do I do that? And he says, well, save up all your money. He says, when you have your money saved up, you can go for a week and not worry about it. Everything will be paid for. Throw a few dollars of spending money in your pocket, and you can have fun, and you can have the best time imaginable, and you can have that freedom of not having to figure out, who you were going to have to, borrow money from, or, who you're going to have to swindle, or any of that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, it's like, how can I apply this in my life? I have a great job, I have credit cards and all this kind of stuff. And then for years after, I struggled every year. We'd say, hey, we're going to go on vacation, and then, and then couldn't pay for it. And I would have all of this discomfort, okay, because the bills wouldn't get paid, and, the next year I'd have more debt, and it's like, how can I possibly learn from this? And I started to thinking about what that guy had told me, and it's like, I could do this a different way. I could make this really simple. It took me a while. It took me a real long while, but I started to apply in those real simple things. It's like, if I have money to go on vacation, then I can save up the money to go on vacation. And if I can't save up the money to go on vacation, then I don't need to go. Like I said, it took me a few years, with 10 years in the program, we almost went through bankruptcy. We kept ourselves together, we kept the house, everything else kind of went, but it was okay. But, we learned the strangest things from people in this program, from the strangest people that we don't think, that can share anything with us and make any sense. And yet the beauty of this program is that, through the unity of this program, we learn things that didn't seem like they had any application to our lives. I guess I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, our next speaker happens to be a personal friend of mine. We tell each other he's my sponsor's assistant and I'm his sponsor's assistant, so, which basically means he's my friend, and we respect each other's recovery. And my friend Dave B is up next.
All right, I'm actually up here. Oh, that seemed like it took forever. All right, I'm an addict, any addict named Dave. Glad to be here, glad to be in recovery, and thank God for Narcotics Anonymous. Narcotics Anonymous has allowed me to change. If you read our literature, somewhere in Just for Today chapter, it says, what we knew about living life almost killed us. So thank God for change. I got a couple disclaimers I want to say. First, one, the biggest one is I got this disease, so you might hear some bullshit come out of my mouth, maybe. You might hear some cuss words. I try not to swear. You might hear me get excited. But, like I said, I got this disease. And it seems like every time they ask me to share at some kind of thing like this, I'm going through some kind of stuff. I don't know why that is. But it always turns out that I'm going through something. And this particular time, I'm like, in the last 4 years, I had my house burned down. I had a lung collapse. Then I had my wife died, and then I had my other lung collapse. And in the last week or so, I've been thinking about all this stuff together, and my wife burnt the house down. So I think about how she must have felt, and now she's gone, and I can't tell her that, I can't tell her anything. So that bugs me. You know what I mean? And so I go through this stuff, and I think, thank God for NA, because through all that shit and through all the stuff that I go through today, I cling to NA. If it wasn't for NA, I wouldn't have anything I have. I wouldn't be breathing, or whatever it is, And I always, I got this disease, so I'm always thinking this crazy stuff. By the way, I remember my first meeting too. My first meeting, I walked in there and I looked around and I said, "Where's the meeting for the real addicts? Because none of you all look like you're suffering like me." So I'm questioning it. I'm looking around and I'm thinking, well, okay, I must be in the wrong meeting. I want to know where the meeting is for the real addicts. Because I'm so self-centered and I got this stuff under control. And then I'm like, they said, keep coming back. Keep coming back. They're telling me to keep coming back. I already plan on keep coming back because I don't have another alternative. So I'm thinking you all just want to take credit for me keeping coming. You want it to be your idea. See, this is how messed up I was in my thinking. And I'm still messed up in my thinking. I got in here out of I was desperate and I got in here. Nobody sent me here, but it doesn't matter. We're all desperate. No matter how we got here, I'm sure our lives were unmanageable. And ever since I got here, I've been looking for a way out. I've been trying to figure out how to get out of here. I know that's not the right thing to do, but that's what goes on. They asked me to speak at this convention, at this workshop, and I'm like, well, NA never said no to me. Yeah, well, that's a pile of crap there. It's like, that's not how I really feel. That's just, I'm just being a parrot. I've been trying to they asked me 3 weeks ago to do this, and I've been thinking right up till today, how do I get out of doing this? But that's not how this program works. If I actually got out of doing all the stuff that I have to do in recovery, I want to have anything that I have. And I'm not talking about the car and the place to live and, Oh, by the way, another disclaimer, I might get choked up. You might see a grown man cry. But, through all that stuff, I found out when I lost everything in recovery what NA actually gave me. It gave me a higher power. It gave me the ability to listen to other people. It gave me the ability to not think that I was in charge of everything. And when they asked me to do this, and they asked me to come up here and share, they told me, I'm looking at this thing and it says personal recovery. Well, somebody said to me in the hallway, personal recovery, isn't that what NA is all about? Thinking, well, yeah, but when they asked me to do this, they said it was on the first tradition. So I look at that. It doesn't say nothing about the first tradition on here. So, although I didn't prepare much, see, I hear people say that all the time. Oh, I didn't really prepare for this too much. Well, guess what? I might be able to say that too. But the truth is, I've been preparing for this for my whole life. I've been preparing for this every stinking day of my life. Every glorious day of my life. Every sad day of my life. Every happy day of my life. I've been preparing for this moment right here. That's another thing Narcotics Anonymous gave me. Was that knowledge. I say it again. They didn't give me a car. They didn't give me money here. They didn't say, here, I have some money. Here, you're going to have a nice career. You're going to run this. You're going to do this. They didn't say that. He said, you can have a life free from drugs. So, the bottom line is, our common welfare comes first. Because personal recovery depends on NA unity. If NA is not unified, if we don't have any unity, then we're going to fall apart. If NA falls apart, I'm in deep shit. I'm in big trouble. Ain't nothing ever kept me clean but NA. And I'm looking at these notes, and I remember one time somebody asked me to speak at this thing, and I got these notes. I think I got them in my pocket, and I've been working on this stuff, and I get to this meeting, and I don't have my notes. So I'm like, well, I'll share anyway. Well, I got done with the meeting, I got home, and the notes were in my pocket. I had the notes on me the whole time. So I don't know how good notes are. Follow me. And another disclaimer, man, I am not a teacher of NA. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a scholar. I'm not an expert. I got this disease, and I need people like me. I go to meetings and I listen to people, and I look around the room, and I'll tell you what, I am so glad that I'm not the only crazy person in the room. Every time I'm at a meeting, I'm reminded that I'm not the only crazy person, because there's some crazy people in here, and I'm one of them. And we feel so comfortable together. We can't act like we do at meetings and at work. We can't go to work and talk like we do in meetings. I need NA worse than I've ever needed anything, you know, because without it, you know, I'll be that person I used to be. I'll be that person that thinks that you're out to get me. You know, I'll be that person that thinks that if you didn't pay your bills, I wouldn't have to. You know, like trying to buy me a pass to get out of my. If you weren't responsible, then I wouldn't have to be responsible. So, in other words, it's your fault that I got to be responsible. It's your fault. Everything was your fault. Everything was somebody else's fault. And I don't have to live that way anymore today because of NA. Boy, that's crazy how, you know, the traditions are in order, just like the steps in order for a reason, you know, and the common thread, the thing, and also there's a whole list of spiritual principles involved with that first tradition. And number one being, of course, unity. But there's something behind all that stuff that's even bigger. It's something that I can't live without. There's three things that are indispensable that I can't do anything without them. Nothing works. Nothing I do works without honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Nothing. It's all worthless if I don't have honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. So I figure, well, whatever I do up here, all I got to do is be honest and not be okay. You know, which is true. But, you know, I've been in a lot of service positions. You know, I've done a lot of service. Service starts by sitting your ass in that chair because there's somebody watching. Somebody's watching. You come in the room, you sit your butt in that chair, that's the beginning of service. And it goes up from there. You know, picking up a piece of trash off the floor that somebody accidentally dropped. Service. You know, open the door for somebody. Service. Making the coffee. All this stuff. It's all service. Once we get involved in the unity of NA, it's all service. We're all here to help each other. You know, stay clean. We can't, like I said in the beginning, I can't do this on my own because what I know about living life almost killed me. You know. So, you know, I worked my way. Actually, I got GSR dumped in my lap. I got a whole group dumped in my lap, which is probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. And then, you know, and it grew from there. I wound up going to area meetings and so on, and I wound up holding positions as I got the clean time. You know, being the you know, the literature chair and the treasurer and, you know, code this or whatever, and then finally, you know, I'm the facilitator. So, facilitator, I know where this, you know, consensus comes in. It's a tough one. It's hard. It's really hard. You know, people want to bang their heads against, you know, each other, you know, with their personalities and stuff, and like, oh man, and then finally, and as a facilitator, you can't have an opinion. You know, it doesn't work like that. You can't be involved in the opinion. You just got to keep things together and keep the consensus rolling. So, you know, like I said, I'm not an expert at this stuff, but I do have some experience. There's no cure for this disease. So even though I'm looking for, you know, they say it gets better. You keep coming, you know, it gets better. Well, see, this addict thinks, well, if it keeps getting better, well, someday I'm going to be all better. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to be this guy who's got this, you know, understands everything and stuff. And That's the disease. Because I say it again, I got this disease. You know, I don't know. Is there anybody new in here? Anybody under 5 years? Anybody under 3 years? I got this disease. Okay. See, where was I going with that? Let me back up a little bit. The general consensus, and maybe I got it written down. Yeah. See, we all have a similar story, and you know, we all we have something really big in common, and that is this disease. And I'm going to let that one go. Okay. I'm going to get on to how together we tell this story of recovery, but alone we tell the story of the disease. And the ends are always the same: jails, institutions, and death. But I like to say there's one other option. If you didn't die, you can wind up in the chair in this room and have another chance. You know, the newcomer is the most important person at any meeting, because they are. It ain't just that we. It's not just that we can't see. A lot of times I think that, you know, hey, if I can keep what I have by giving it away, well, geez, I want to run around giving it away. Then all of a sudden, my motivation is to give it is to get something. I'm trying to keep something. But the real way to keep something is to really authentically want to give it. You know, I found that out by coming here. And I enjoyed the view coming up here. Anybody enjoy the view coming up here? You know, and the view looking out the windows. I don't know why these windows are shut. Why are these drapes pulled? Open them up. You know? No, I'm not going to do that, but it's pretty nice to do that. And, see, there was something else I wanted to cover. You know, it may seem like I'm nervous, but I'm not. You know, I've got lots of experience in you know, music, business, and stuff like that. But what it is I'm running out of things to say. You know, I wish there was more that, because I look around the room and I see these faces, and I just, you know, I love all of you people. You know. You know, I thought of something funny when I was in I was in a different workshop, and they were talking about, you know, and this is how this disease works too. They're talking about, you know, hey, anybody with this amount of clean time, blah blah blah. If you know, I want everybody to get up and hug somebody you don't know. But first, she brought her sponsor, or sponsee, up on the stage with her, right? So these two are on the stage, and she says, you know, everybody get up and hug somebody you don't know. Well, nobody went up to the stage and hugged those two. You know what I'm saying? Nobody hugged the speaker. Nobody hugged her sponsee that she had come up on the stage, right? So I'm thinking, oh, man, if I would have had 2 more minutes, I would have been the one to go up on that stage and hug those people if I would have thought about it. Because I'm a pretty important fella. I'm the smartest guy in the room. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You know, that's how this disease works. That's how I think. See, I get, because of NA, I get time. I get time to not react to those thoughts. They don't go away. This is what I wanted to cover right here. The 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous are a vehicle of change. They're not a cure. They are not a cure. They are a vehicle of change. If there was a cure, I would want it, okay? And anybody in this room would want it. But guess what? We're addicts. So when we think about a cure, what's the first thought that comes to your mind? Well, to me, if I think about a cure, I'm not thinking, well, geez, that's cool. I'll never want to use again. No. The first thing I think of is, oh, that's cool. I'll be able to use without making my life unmanageable. What kind of stuff is that? Think about that. What kind of person thinks that everything I look at, I think I can apply it to how I can use. This is how I can use. I do that every day, all day. I do that and I don't even think about it. But here's what recovery does for NA. For me, it tells me that I got this much time now to think about this without reacting. And it grows with every year. I got this much time to think about this without reacting. Because before, boom, I'm reacting right now. You know? When somebody pulls out in front of me in a car, you know, I'm chasing them down, giving them the finger. But today, I got this much time where I can think about this. I have a choice because of Narcotics Anonymous and because I'm not high. You know? So, NA unity. Man, oh man, don't you guys break up NA. Don't do it. I'm crazy. And I'm looking around and you guys are looking at me, yeah, like he's crazy. Guess what? You're crazy too. Or you wouldn't be in here. You know. How much time I got? Got something, you know, hey, you better shut me off now because something might come up and I want to speak for another 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here, even though I tried to get out of it in my own mind for 3 weeks. It always turns out to be helpful for me. You know, and a lot of times somebody else, but all that stuff that I put myself through, all those thoughts and all the, you know, doubts and all that shit that I put myself through, I make it through. And I made it through it today. So thanks for letting me share.